Awash in a saturated amber glow stands a plastic crucifix. This photo of a statuette submerged in a case of urine and photographed, Immersion, Piss Christ, brought American artist and photographer Andres Serrano extraordinary infamy. Andres Serrano is an American artist born in 1950 in New York. He studied art, specifically photography, at the Brooklyn Museum from 1967 to 1969. He later acknowledged that he worked as a drug dealer and struggled with substance abuse in the 1970s while in New York City. He returned to photography in the early 1980s and took an interest in working with figurative art. His work evoked and explored the religious upbringing he experienced in his Hispanic Roman Catholic childhood home. He was also intensely interested and delved into an exploration of how he could use fluids in his work: milk, blood, urine, and semen. This series led to the creation of Immersion, Piss Christ, better known as just Piss Christ. The Cibachrome photograph of Piss Christ by Andres Serrano depicts a small plastic crucifix statue submerged in a bright red-yellow liquid, which, due to the title of the work and testimony of the artist, we know to be Serrano's own urine. Although it's been described as a crucifix submerged in a jar of urine, the receptacle is actually a small, thin, rectangular tank. The photograph, created in 1987, was part of a larger series exploring immersions in classic iconography. 2 years prior, Serrano had created Blood Cross, a photograph of a plexiglass cross filled with cow's blood and slightly leaking to look as if the figure itself were bleeding. Piss Christ appears glossy with little bubbles embedded in the reddish-yellow substance. The crucifix is blurry as seen through the liquid. At first glance, it is impossible to work out that the figure isn't anything but bodily fluid, as it might as well be honey cross-lit with a red light. Serrano himself has proclaimed that the work is not intended to be an overt political statement on religion, but rather that he prefers the work remain ambiguous. Despite this desire for ambiguity, Serrano has also alluded to being interested in the over-commercialization and cheapening of Christian iconography in contemporary culture. As a lifelong Christian himself, he denounces the idea that he intended to create a blasphemous piece, but rather that it was a personal and serious work of art. Quote, "For me, Piss Christ was always a work of art and an act of devotion," Serrano said. "I was born and raised a Catholic and have been a Christian all my life. As a child, and especially as I was preparing for my Holy Communion and confirmation, I often heard the nuns speak reverentially of the body and blood of Christ. They also said that it was wrong to idolize representations of Christ, since these were only representations and not holy objects themselves. My work was, in part, a comment on that paradox. I am neither a blasphemer nor anti-Christian, as some have called me, and I stand by my work as an artist and as a Christian. Where the photograph has ignited spirited debate, that has been a good thing. Perhaps it reminds some people to question what we unthinkingly fetishize and thereby often minimize in lieu of pondering seriously what the crucifix actually symbolizes: the unimaginably torturous death of Christ, the Son of God." When Serrano's Piss Christ debuted in 1987 at the Stux Gallery in New York City, it was rather favorably received. The piece went on to be exhibited at the Southeastern Center for Contemporary Art in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, where it won the institution's awards in the Visual Arts Competition, sponsored by the National Endowment for the Arts. As the National Endowments for the Arts is an American government agency that offers financial funding for artistic projects, Serrano ended up receiving backlash in 1989 from United States Senator Al D'Amato and Jesse Helm for receiving money from the taxpayer-funded government organization. 10 years after Piss Christ debuted, Serrano's work was being exhibited at the National Gallery of Victoria in Australia. Though the Catholic Archbishop of Melbourne at the time, George Pell, unsuccessfully sought an injunction from the Supreme Court to ban the artwork from public display a few days later, one angered gallery visitor tried to personally remove the photograph from the gallery wall. Later on, 2 teenagers attempted to destroy it with a hammer. The officials at the National Gallery of Victoria reportedly received numerous death threats in response to the exhibition, and the gallery's director at the time canceled the show early. On April 17, 2011, while on display as part of the I Believe in Miracles exhibition at the Collection Lambert Contemporary Art Museum in Avignon, France, a print of Immersion, Piss Christ, was vandalized beyond repair by a pair of angry, hammer-wielding Christians. But not all Christians were against the photo. Sister Wendy Beckett, a Catholic nun who is also an art historian for the BBC, commented that, though rather simplistic and magazine-y, the depiction of the crucifix represents what we are doing to Christ. She said, "We're not treating him with reverence. His great sacrifice is not used. We live very vulgar lives. We put Christ in a bottle of urine in practice." It was a very admonitory work. It could be, it could not be. It's what you make of it. And I could make something that could make me feel a deep desire to reverence the death of Christ more by the suggestion that this is what in practice the world is doing. To this day, protesters continue to rally in opposition to Serrano's Immersion, Piss Christ. So is it art or indecency? In the words of Serrano himself, artists often work in mysterious ways, using unorthodox materials and ideas to challenge convention and put hard and necessary questions to powerful people and traditions. We don't always want to hear what they have to say, but a free, tolerant society needs its artists and writers, and they must be free to live, work, and speak without fear of censorship, attack, or murder. Artists look ahead and plot the future. They map the culture and tell us where we stand. In doing so, artists are a free society's greatest advocates and its best bulwarks. Their triumphs are civilization's triumphs.